What up? Skylar here, bringing you my first ever New World guide. Before we get started, I'd like to make one thing abundantly clear. Video games are first and foremost designed to be enjoyed. If you don't find the process of min-maxing or strategizing enjoyable in video games, then please don't assume that I'm telling people that this is the way you should play the game. New World could easily be played as a single-player RPG, and there's a great experience to be had there, and many other ways. This is simply what I enjoy doing with any game I play, discovering tactics and the best ways to move forward given specific metrics of success. That being said, this is an MMORPG, which means that the best thing to do is a hotly contested topic. It's hard to say in a game with so much to do. Is it speed leveling to 60, leveling crafting as soon as possible, focusing on controlling forts and territories, or a mixture of those things? I'm not here to give an opinion on that subject, but rather, I look to determine what would be a good course of action to take regardless of the way you decide to play, or what you focus on. Regardless if you play PvP, a gathering focused playstyle, crafting, focus on community aspects, large-scale companies, or anything else, the one thing everyone wants is to save time with the menial aspects. In New World, this most drastically comes in three forms in the early game. Inventory space, governed by bags, harvesting speed, governed by tools, and fast travel management, governed by inns, housing, and Azoth. In this guide, I will be focusing on upgrading bags, tools, and acquiring a house as early as possible to save as much time in the long run. This guide will not get you out to the absolute fastest start possible, but for players who neglect these things, you will pass them at around level 25, provided you are grinding as hard as they are. Also keep in mind that this guide is designed for a fresh server start. It's fine to be used as a new player guide, but not all the information will be viable if you join late. Whether or not you follow this guide word for word or simply use some of the information available to develop your own strategy, I'm confident that this guide is something most people have not considered. Once the servers go live, you will load into the intro cinematic, which can be skipped by pressing and holding left mouse button. Once you complete making and naming your character, you will wash up in the tutorial area. If you are unfamiliar with the basics of the game, go ahead and play through it. But for those of us who have already played through the tutorial multiple times, you can skip it by pressing escape, navigating to game options, and pressing skip to New World. If you do this, the only thing you will be missing out on is a sword weapon mastery point. If you want that mastery point, you have to kill the fourth bad guy in the tutorial. His death triggers the mastery point gain, so you don't have to worry about killing the ones before him, and then you can skip the tutorial from there. Once on the beaches of Eternum, open your map and take note of where you are located. You will have spawned in one of four starting regions: First Light in the south, Monarch's Bluff to the west, Everfall to the north, or Windsward to the east. Most people assume your starting location has little effect on your character's progression, but for this guide, we will want to spawn in Windsward. If you find that you did indeed spawn in Windsward, you won the RNG roll and should consider yourself fortunate. We will, however, assume you did not. If that is the case, in which you spawned in any of the other three starting regions, then it's imperative that you do not accept the first quest from the initial quest giver on the beach. The main quest will be telling you to talk to the NPC in front of you, and indeed, we must talk to them. But after the initial quest is completed, your dialogue with this NPC will prompt you to accept another quest. Do not accept this quest. Instead, back out of the dialogue and open your map. You will notice that the next quest can be obtained in any of the four starting beaches. As bizarre and inefficient as it may seem to run 10 minutes across the entire map just to start the same questline in a different zone, it is what we must do. People debate which of the four starting regions is the best, and usually the argument comes down to Everfall versus Windsward, due to the fact that Monarch's Bluff and First Light's town are positioned very far out of the way. Windsward and Everfall have a much more centralized location. However, Windsward has a few advantages over Everfall, especially for this guide. The first advantage is that Windsward is the closest town to Jonas Alazar, the early game main quest NPC, who you will end up returning to more than any other NPC in the early game. Having your base of operations in Windsward will allow you to save a lot of Azoth traveling back and forth. On top of that, Windsward has a natural freshwater source, since a river runs through it. The town's crafting stations are all very close to one another. And finally, Windsward has a house available for purchase at the level 10 territory standing threshold, whereas Everfall's earliest house has to be obtained at 15 standing. This is the main reason we want to start our early game questline in Windsward. This questline, in addition to teaching players the basics, will also give considerable experience points and territory standing, approximately 4,500 territory standing, which for the early game is quite significant, especially if you want to obtain a house as soon as possible. If you decide that it isn't worth it for you to travel across the land to Windsward, that's fine. Most of this guide can be adapted to any start location. Just keep in mind that the 10 minutes lost in traveling is not enough time to make up the difference in territory standing you will have at the end of the beginning questline. That is to say, you cannot farm 4,500 standing in 10 minutes. Before we set off on our great trek, be sure to grab 4 4 wood and 4 flint in order to craft a full set of flint tools at the campfire on your starting beach by the NPC. Once you have your tools, set off to Windward. Along the way, we need to collect multiple items for upcoming quests and objectives. Iron ore should be collected at every opportunity, up to 138 units. 40 stone will need to be gathered for an upcoming quest. We will need 65 greenwood collected from bushes for quests and materials. The smaller the bush, the better, because we have a chance to collect woodlouse bait from them. Any herbs you see should be collected for hyssop, as much as is available. Be sure to pick up any flint that is directly along your path. We will need a total of 232 flint for our overall goal, but don't worry about picking it all up before you arrive at Windward. Also, nuts should be harvested if you come across any throughout your playthrough. In addition, be sure to stop by any settlements or spirit shrines you pass closely by along your way. Personally, I use a New World map website to help me recognize when I am near anything of interest. This will save you time in the future when you need to travel back to these locations. You will also need 35 rawhide, but that can be obtained later when you kill boars or wolves in Windward. Furthermore, read any glowing blue lore pages for quick EXP by pressing T to add them to your journal without having to stop to read them, and pass by any new locations for the discovery experience as well. Take notice, if you manage to collect 5 woodlouse bait from bushes on your way, you can turn in the first fishing quest near Windward for an additional 280 experience. Considering the distance we have to travel, taking advantage of any movement speed bonus will save us significant time. There's a lot of foot travel required throughout this game, so the next technique is really important to get comfortable with. It's called animation canceling, and as the name suggests, we will be reducing the end of our rolling animation by canceling it with a weapon sheath. Normally, when you roll, your character will stop for a moment before continuing to run. If, however, you sheath your weapon or swap your weapon during the last handful of frames during your roll animation, your character will simply continue running in one fluid motion. Keep in mind that this can be done with any type of dodge in the game, but the lightweight roll is the best for movement. Also be aware that rolling costs 50 stamina in most circumstances, and depleting your stamina bar will reduce your move speed until it fully regenerates. Because of this, it's best to only roll when you have over 50 stamina available. Once you reach Windward, drop off your wood, flint, iron, and hide if you have any. Then check into the inn and head down to the beach. From here, simply continue the starting questline as if you had spawned in Windward normally. You'll be a bit behind the curve at this point, but don't worry, it'll pay off later. As you continue to pick up flint everywhere you go, there are a couple small optimizations that can be made here and throughout our travels, such as drowning or dying to mobs to teleport back to a respawn point, which is considerably faster than running in a lot of cases, and cheaper than teleporting. Just be sure you're close enough to the location you want to travel to when you die. Basically, if you have the means to respawn and are close enough to the town you want to go to, it's faster to respawn than to run. Also, as you acquire territory standing, it's important to spend it on the right cards. I recommend choosing standing gain and storage whenever available. Standing cards have diminishing returns, but the overall cap is at level 300. That being said, getting 300 standing in any region is something that 99% of players will never achieve. Storage does not suffer from diminishing returns and as such should be prioritized, because standing gain gets us more storage faster. It also should be picked until the diminishing returns get really bad at around 26% additional standing gain. And don't worry, standing gain and storage will never be available to be picked together. When you are required to kill boars during Campfire Feast, be on the lookout to skin any dead boars that are left unattended. This is a perfect area to acquire the 35 rawhide we need for our iron gear and quest. If the boars are too competitive on the beach, you can look to harvest some during the truffles quest, which you will get on your way to the town. Another tip with the starting quest is when you are directed to enter the corrupted cave, you can actually enter through the intended exit by scaling some rocks and running to the veil to activate the checkpoint, which saves a bit of time. When in the caves, be sure to harvest any available saltpeter and loot the chest for weapons. My leveling build focuses in on 3 weapons: hatchet, greataxe, and life staff. I will be PvP flagged for most of my leveling process, so my build takes PvP into consideration. That being said, we take the hatchet because Berserk is one of the best abilities for PvE and has great PvP utility as well. The main passives that throw Berserk into overdrive are Berserking Refresh and Uninterruptible Berserk. I won't go into a full weapon breakdown, but just know that these abilities will allow you to solo level very quickly. The reason for the Greataxe is the mobility and the chase down potential of the weapon. Between Reap, Charge, Gravity Well, Bloodlust, and the lunge on its basic attack, you will have more than enough lockdown and chase to kill any player who is weaker than you. And between Gravity Well, Charge, and On the Hunt, you will have the ability to run away from most groups of players or stronger solo players. My PvP philosophy while leveling is, if you can't win the fight quickly, it's not worth engaging in the first place. So run from groups and run from over-leveled players. I know, I'm lucky. Obviously, if you want to just have fun with PvP, then go for it. If you're smart with your camp placement, you shouldn't really ever lose much time to being killed in PvP. As far as the life staff is concerned, I will be swapping my Greataxe out for the life staff during expeditions and focusing on obtaining the second passive of Sacred Ground, which will increase your refreshing berserk heals by 50%. In addition, I will be speccing fully into Constitution in order to increase my berserk heals even further, and to ensure I will give myself the ability to make as many mistakes as possible without being punished for them. You can go any build you want, and I think everything is viable for both PvP and PvE, but that being said, different weapons and skill trees perform better at different things than others, so my best advice is to just use what you enjoy. For me, I think Berserk is just too powerful to pass up for solo PvE leveling. Now that we're in Windsward, you should have most of the materials to craft your iron tools in either our iron hatchet or Greataxe, assuming you didn't get one from the chest. Before we craft, however, it's a good idea to progress the questline until Fire Up the Forges, where we acquire the heavy satchel, which contains 90 iron ore and 20 rawhide, which are the remaining resources we need to complete our iron set and build the iron sword for the quest. Also grab some water from the river and craft as many weak health potions as you can, provided you picked up some hyssop, which you should have. Any nuts you have at this point can be turned into light rations. From here, our overall next objectives are obtaining 1000 faction tokens, 250 gold, level 30 gathering, level 25 skinning, reaching 10 territory standing in Windsward, reaching level 50 smelting and engineering, progressing the main quest line to Destiny Unearthed, which is the point where you have to clear the first expedition Amrine excavation, then obtaining 2,500 gold for a house, traveling to Cleaves Point, and finally crafting a set of steel tools. Beyond that, we want to reach level 24 and get rank 2 in our faction, an additional 9,000 faction tokens, as well as an additional 1,500 gold, and finally level 50 leatherworking, then heading to Mountain Rise to craft tier 3 bags. Additionally, at this point, you can also craft a bunch of extra steel tools depending on the amount of flux you have to make some money on the market. To achieve all these goals, you will primarily want to focus on the main quest, but subsidize it with faction quests, both PvP and PvE, as well as side quests and town board quests. I recommend cycling through PvE faction quests every time you enter any town to try and roll quests near the main quest objective. I also recommend having a notepad to write down all your town board quests on. Town board quests give a lot of territory experience, so having ones that you can complete and removing ones that are not viable is important. We're looking for things like wolf kills, boar kills, rabbit or turkey kills, nightcrawler bait, woodlouse bait, flint turn-ins, weak health potions, and really anything that seems straightforward to collect. We want to avoid quests such as killing bears, alligators, lynx, or turning in large amounts of resources like 300 Greenwood or something like that. While you're questing, it's important to be collecting resources along the way. You should still be collecting flint up to 232 total and nuts whenever you see them. You should also be harvesting hemp, hyssop, blueberries, and fungus until you reach level 30 gathering. Then, put less focus on collecting hemp and basic fungus, but still harvest herbs, berries, petal caps, and plate caps every time you see them. For the early stages, we only need about 100 hemp for our tier 2 bag. Once at 30, be on the lookout for magical plants to collect as well, but don't go too far out of your way to get them. I would say Rivercress and Earthspire are the ones to go out of your way for. Everything else, grab if it's convenient. Later on, we will need 3 Rivercress stem and 3 petal caps for the main quest, Weakness of the Ego, anyway. Any iron you see is imperative to collect. Silver is also nice. Do not pass it up, and be competitive about collecting the nodes. 50 mining is a great threshold for alchemy stones, which should never be passed once you can mine them. Any rabbits or turkeys should be murdered on site and harvested. Any dead animal corpses should be harvested. Any animal that you kill should also be skinned. I would recommend getting 10 skinning before leaving the second wolf questing area during the quest Survival Tips. Any large game that come directly across your path should be killed, and we want to reach level 25 skinning before feeling comfortable with letting animal corpses rot. Wood, on the other hand, can be neglected and harvested when needed. Any supply crates you see should be collected. We are going to want as many refining reagents as we can get our hands on, especially flux, and to a slightly lesser degree tannin. At some point, if you're progressing the early main quest and side quests, you will be given the quest Between Innkeeps. This quest will reward a tier 1 bag, which will increase your carrying capacity by 50 pounds. However, once we obtain 1000 faction tokens, which should be shortly after this quest, if you have been doing faction missions, we will be able to purchase a minor rune of holding for 250 gold at the faction shop. Along with our tokens and a bit of linen, leather, and iron, this will allow us to make a tier 2 bag, which will increase our carry weight by 100 pounds and potentially give us a good perk. Be sure to not spend your gold on anything else aside from this, as we will want 2,500 gold when we hit 10 territory standing in Windsward. When you first meet Jonas Alazar during the quest Corruption Expert, the quest you turn in will be worth 100 territory standing. Fisherman's Bend lays on the border between Windsward and Monarch's Bluff, and depending on the region you are in when turning in this first quest, will determine where you gain the standing. Do it in Windsward. Windward. None of the other quest turn-ins to Jonas grant territory standing, so you only have to do this small optimization once. Once you progress the main quest to the Living Seeds, you will be near a cave called Ebon Rock Quarry. Above this, there's a location called Ebon Rock Mine. Chances are you will have some side or faction quests telling you to go there anyway. This cave is where we will be farming our saltpeter for gunpowder to get engineering to level 50. There are a ton of saltpeter nodes, and farming up to 116 should not take long provided there isn't too much competition. At this point, you should have 232 flint if you haven't neglected picking them up, and 116 saltpeter for crafting your gunpowder. The only thing left now is the charcoal. You can farm up the wood for the charcoal at any time at this point before or after you reach Destiny Unearthed. You will need to chop 1,360 green wood to make 580 charcoal, which will also give you 10,440 smelting experience, which means you only need to smelt 403 iron ore to get the remaining 3,625 smelting experience for smelting level 50, which will give us access to steel ingots, the final component for steel tools. At this point, craft your gunpowder, and you should be at least level 50 engineering. Keep in mind, crafting 580 gunpowder will also give you over 1,500 territory standing in Windward if you craft it there, and over 5,000 experience points. You will need 40 extra green wood for timber and 24 rawhide for coarse leather in order to craft the steel tools. But the bulk of the wood is turned into charcoal for steel. So with engineering and smelting both at 50, all that is left to do is to reach territory standing 10 at Windward and obtain 2,500 gold to purchase a house. You should have the gold by the time you reach Destiny Unearthed, which is the Amrine main quest. And if you are short on territory standing, it shouldn't be by much, and you can just complete some town board quests to get yourself there. The main reason we want a house is primarily because of the house recall that becomes available when you are a homeowner. But just as a side, you can also increase your storage with chests in a house. The tier 1 house has a 4-hour cooldown on fast travel, which seems like a long time, but in reality, you can just pay Azoth to reset the cooldown to 0. Imagine house recall as an in recall that you can pay to reset whenever you want, to have the ability to travel back to your base of operations whenever and wherever you are. Normal Azoth fast travel is only available within sanctuaries, that is, towns or spirit shrines, and its cost is based off a base cost plus distance and weight modifiers, finally being discounted by faction or company modifiers. This can be less than convenient and end up costing a ton of Azoth if you have a full inventory or want to cross the map. However, if you have a house, you can simply reduce that cost to at the most 49 Azoth to reset the full 4-hour cooldown. Then you can travel home from anywhere. In addition, this frees up your inn selection to whatever town you are questing near to further increase the ease of travel. Personally, I will be setting my inn at Cleves Point, which is very far north and usually is a 200 plus Azoth fast travel cost. This will allow me to make steel tools as often as I have the resources without needing to spend much Azoth on fast travel. Once you have territory standing 10 and have purchased the house, it's time to gather our steel, coarse leather, and timber to make the long trek north to Cleves Point Outpost to access the Tier 3 engineering workshop there. At the start of the server, all town stations and workbenches will be at Tier 2 and cannot be upgraded until the region is under a company's control and chooses to upgrade a specific station with gold and town board contributions. We need a Tier 3 engineering workbench to craft steel tools. Fortunately, the northern regions start with Tier 3 stations, thus why we must travel to Cleves Point Outpost. This is a very treacherous journey, and great care should be taken to avoid getting obliterated by the high-level mobs. Because all the mobs in this zone will be over 10 levels above you, they will have increased aggro range. I recommend light armor to help you dodge any attacks that come your way. The main thing to look out for is wolves or other four-legged animals. They have a leaping attack that can reach you while running. It's very important to dodge these attacks as they perform them and not too early. It's imperative to not run out of stamina during this journey, as the reduced move speed will prove deadly. You can make camps every 500 meters to give yourself a safety net if you do indeed die, so as to not be sent back to Timbuktu. Once you make it, be sure to check into the inn and then simply craft your steel tools with Azoth, and pick the ones that roll the yield perk. I personally think yield is the only important perk on tools, but luck and experience are nice as well. At this point, you have your set of steel tools, but now we need to increase the amount of flux we have in order to continue to make a lot more to sell. My best advice is to continue doing side quests or clearing Amrine excavation with a good group until you reach level 24. At this point, you should have easily maxed out your faction rank 1 reputation, and will have access to the faction rank increase quest at level 24. Once completed, you will have access to purchasing material converters. My recommendation is to swap all your solvent, crossweave, and sandpaper to flux. Make as much steel as you can and craft as many steel tools to put on the market. You can also check the prices for refining reagents to buy some yourself. Obviously, if you're not interested in selling tools or making more for your friends or company members, you don't have to. But seeing as you will be one of the few players to have steel tools this early on in the server, you might want to consider it. The next step is Tier 3 bags. For this, we will need 50 leatherworking, 50 outfitting, and a lot of hemp and rawhide. I suggest traveling to Awful Grotto to farm Rawhide off the divine links there. You will need 25 skinning in order to harvest them, in order to craft tier 3 bags, which I recommend you do. You will need 2,160 Rawhide. This amount will get you more than enough leatherworking experience to reach level 50. Reaching level 50 outfitting can be done by simply leveling off of linen shirts from 1 to 50, which will require 27 linen shirts, which will cost 108 iron ore, 1,296 rawhide, and 2,376 fiber. Add that on top of the 2,160 rawhide, and we will need a total of 3,456 total rawhide. Alternatively, you can subsidize some of your outfitting experience with weak oak flesh balm, available at level 20 outfitting. To get from 20 to 50 on just balm, you will need to craft 227 of them, which will cost 227 oil, 227 earth motes, and 227 water motes. Motes are pretty valuable, but this will save you considerable time if you have a bunch stored up at this point from farming magical plants. You will also need 75 linen and 30 iron or steel ingots. The last thing you will need is 3 major runes of holding, which in total will cost 1,500 gold and 9,000 faction tokens. However you go about it, you then need to travel north again, this time to Mountain Rise, to access the tier 3 outfitting station. Mountain Rise is in Shattered Mountain, which is the highest level area in the game, so I recommend placing camps down since it's easy to get one-shot by random arrows. And that's all, folks. I didn't get much endgame footage because I didn't access much endgame content. During the closed beta, I reached level 50, and during the open beta, I was focusing on getting footage. But if it's endgame guides you're looking for, I'm sure there's plenty of other videos on YouTube to help you out in that regard. The last tip I will leave you with is the most important one I could possibly ever think of: have fun. This is a game after all, and you should play it however you want, regardless of how anyone else plays. I'll see you all in a tournament. But yes, if anyone's interested, I will be streaming on Twitch on the West Coast server called El Dorado. We'll be a casual Covenant company of friends and fellow gamers. If anyone is on the West Coast and wants to join, you are all more than welcome to. I can't promise more guides like this in the future, as my primary content on my main channel is concerning videos that everyone can enjoy, regardless if you play the game or not. But I love making guides, and if I do drop another, it will be here. So subscribe and check out the socials to keep up to date. Thanks for watching.